Hey guys, welcome to Biblical Marriage Month video 2. Alright guys, welcome back. I'm Laura Wilkie with Down Home with Lemon Pie, and I'm a Christian stay-at-home homeschool mama of 7. And this is Biblical Marriage Month. We are promoting and celebrating something that the world is telling us is no longer valid or true or whatever. And we are going to put our feet down and we are going to step up and start supporting it and celebrating it the way it should be. And so last week I shared with you guys about what our plans are in our home for courting or dating with a purpose, dating with intention. I got so many good feedbacks from you guys and I was excited about that. But today I'm going to talk about the role of a husband in a society, in a time period when men are being encouraged to be feminine. They are encouraged to let their wives make the decisions. They're encouraged to support their wives in a manner that is not bringing up the men as well. I see so many shows and books and cartoons where they are just demeaning to men, and I cannot stand it. I have turned off shows in our home because the dads or the husbands in the shows are shown and portrayed to be stupid or ignorant or just like these fat slobs who sit around. And not only is that damaging to the men in our lives, the husbands, but it starts to the way we view them, but it also starts to come out in the way they behave. And so we start ending up with a society, a culture of men who are not standing up for masculinity. They are just bowing down to their women. They're raising up feminine things and letting their wives be the breadwinners and all of these things. And so today we're going to be talking about the role of a husband in a marriage. Probably the best known, most well-known verse in regards to husband is Ephesians 5:25-27. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church, and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. It's beautiful, but it is often taken the wrong way. I see oftentimes that a man, particularly probably like in the 70s, I would see this, or maybe even in the 80s and the 60s, where it feels like men were encouraged to be like, I'm the leader of this home and you will do what I say. This like angry, domineering, kind of like dictator. And that is not what the Bible says. And that is so often taken out of context. Feminists use this, as a thing against the Bible. And we need to listen closely to that verse, because it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, okay? And we need to remember that Jesus literally died for the church. He was giving himself up constantly to get people saved for the church. And he wasn't this bullying, abusive, angry, domineering, like dictator that was walking the earth, right? He was a servant. He had good leadership skills, and we are lacking that in society. Can we just be honest? As a society, we do not have good leadership skills. Jesus was a protector, or a husband should be a protector. A husband should pursue God. Ultimately, first and foremost, a husband should pastor the home, should step out and initiate things, and a husband should not be passive. We are raising, as a society, not you and me, but as a society, our culture is raising men and boys to be men that are passive, and they are just waiting for their wives to take over and control the situations. God asked Adam first in the garden. When he went and God knew that Eve had sinned, and he asked Adam because Adam was in charge, basically, of her. He was watching over her. His job was to lead her and guide her, and that's why he went to him first. Similarly, when you think about that, you think about men have so much as a leader in the home that they are responsible for, and that is because when they get to heaven, a wife is going to account for what she has done, and a husband is going to account for how he led that family. And our men need to be, they are different. They need to be different. We forget sometimes, or as a society, we try to say, oh, men and women are the same. Everything's the same. We need to be equal for everything. And we are not equal. Men are physically made different. They are physically stronger. They're built differently. They are intended to use that strength to protect and to help their families, not to beat and injure and have a stick against their wives. And that's where you get into this tricky situation where you end up with all of these women who have been in abusive relationships, and they're confused because they don't know how a man should act. And you have men who are confused because they don't know how a man should act, and they think, oh, well, my dad didn't do anything, or my dad was really aggressive, and that's not biblical. It's just not. And so we need to start raising our boys to be men of God, and to be husbands, to be leaders according to the Bible, and to not raise themselves against their wives and children, but to use their strength wisely. And so the second thing I have written down here is be a laborer. Men, like I said, they were built differently. God gave us work to do. The first thing he did to Adam was gave him work to do. He put him in the garden, and then he gave him jobs. He wanted him to work in the garden and do the animals and all these things. We were created by God so that we can create things, not so that we can sit around and be lazy, or not even so that we can sit around trying to find all the things that are going to please us in life, all of the wonderful things that we can do or buy or whatever. We were created by God to create. And Jesus even said in John 5:27, we actually just talked about this verse in my Sunday school class, my Father is working, so I am working. And it's true. It's true. We are raising a society of men who are lazy and passive, and who want to just sit and wait for things to come to them. And husbands, we don't need to be that way. Husbands, you have the privilege, and I have said it that way on purpose because it is a privilege. It is a privilege to provide for your family. And in our society, we're trying to squash that and tell men that they are having to do bad work and all this stuff, and that women should be able to be the providers too, because women are so horribly treated that they have to provide at home and all these things. And, the way God created it, the way he designed it, works beautifully when done to his design. But for some reason, because we're humans, we want to change it. And we don't need to change it. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes being intentional about it to learn to be a biblical husband or wife. Next week, we'll talk about wives, so stay with me. But men should have a good work ethic. They should want to work. They should want to provide. They should not want to be lazy. They should be a worker and not a dreamer. We are raising so many dreamers in today's society. Again, not you and me, but as a society, as a culture, as a whole. And men should not be putting a strain on their family so that they can just be lazy, okay? They shouldn't be making things more challenging for their children or their wives, either by not working or not pursuing higher things or whatever, because they just don't want to do it, okay? I'm not talking about people who don't maybe have the skills or the physical capability. I'm not talking about people that are maybe disabled and they can't do these hard jobs, but I'm talking about as a whole. I know all these little things, but what about are going to come in the comments. But as a whole, a man should be the worker, the provider in their home. Young people today think that they can find a better way, that working for a paycheck is not going to be sufficient. It's not good enough. There's a better way, and they're going to find it. And when they don't find it, then it causes trouble. So yes, they can try to do those things, but that doesn't need to be their main focus. I think that needs to be like, if you're doing well in your job and providing for your family, that's your focus. Now you can also work on this on the side. And if that takes off, yay. But if not, we need to still go back to our main number one goal and our focus of providing for our families. Okay, the next thing I have is men. The role of a husband is to be loyal. This is a hard one I hear in men and men in general, but I think for ladies as well. But men need to be walking in purity. They need to honor their wife. Let's go back to that verse. Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. Okay, so it doesn't say that Christ looked at the church and said, oh, these people have problems, I'm going to go find some new people to be the church. No, he didn't say that. He helped the church to become beautiful and spotless and without blemish. And that, husbands, is what we need to do with our wives. There is no perfect woman in the world. There's just not. And I understand your wife is wonderful and beautiful and quite near as perfect as can get, but she will have flaws. And I've heard it said as the 80-20. Your wife can only please or provide for 80% of the things you need as a wife could do, and that there will always be that 20% waiting, like, oh, but she didn't do this and she burned my eggs again or whatever, right? She should have known I didn't want it with onions, right? But we can work to make that better, and we don't need to damage our marriages to do that. We don't need to go seeking, men. You don't need to go seeking another wife, like, this one can't seem to do this right, so I'm gonna go find someone who can, because Satan will always find you someone who can do that. But I guarantee when you go to that next wife, there will be something she can't do, and you will think, oh, the first wife could do that and you can't, or you'll go find another one. Like, it just doesn't stop. There is no perfect wife. This is where grace comes in. This is where mercy comes in. This is where love comes in. And another thing that we actually don't do is we have kind of a rule in our marriage, and you should too, I think, that men shouldn't be texting women. And women shouldn't be texting men. For example, if there is somebody in the church that I wanted to talk to, and it was a man, maybe I wanted to ask them something specifically, I'm not going to text them, try to put it into a text. I will have my husband do it. Same with him. If he's like, hey, can you ask this lady this? He will have me do it, so that there is that boundary. And I think this is a very common thing. I think a lot of people have this kind of boundary that men, you don't need to be texting women if you're married, and women, you don't need to be texting men if you're married. I'm not talking about your cousins. Again, I'm not talking about all the other ifs, ands, or buts or whatever. But I'm talking about keeping yourselves pure in a situation that you won't fall into something that you don't need to, because again, Satan will use those things. We also have kind of a rule that we don't really hang out with people alone of the opposite sex. So I won't go hang out with a man, even if he's been my best friend my whole life. Even if I grew up with him, I won't go hang out with him without my husband with me, or without his wife with him. Okay, so as a one-on-one, though, we wouldn't do that, because that's just put you in a situation that could be dangerous in the future and could lead to other things. So it's just part of walking in purity. It's honoring your wife and that commitment that you've made. Satan wants to use all of those things. He's very good at it. And he wants to use them to destroy your marriage. So having just a few simple rules or, rules in your marriage will help that. We have to be intentional. We do, because Satan is very intentional as well. Do not flirt. That's where it all starts. If there is something, I always heard this, like if a man is hearing things that if he needs to hear things and he's hearing them from someone else, like maybe a lady at work, is complimenting his tie or his shirt or his shoes or whatever, two sides of this. One side we'll talk about next week with the wives and how they should address that. But this week, let's talk about the man. Men, you don't need to take that compliment, okay? You don't need to, you can say thank you and move on. You need to remove yourself from that situation, because that is going down a dangerous road already. So that is one side. We'll look at the other side next week. Another kind of rule that we have in our marriage is that my husband and myself, we do not talk bad about the other person with other people. If there is a problem in our marriage, I am going to talk about it with my husband. I'm not going to go to my friend or my neighbor and, oh, you're not going to believe what he did this time. I'm not going to do that, because when you start doing that, it opens up those doors to where you start to become disloyal to your spouse and your friend. Even if your spouse makes it up to you, you may not inform your friend, and now they are going to continue that talk with you later. Okay, so they're going to say something like, well, remember when he did this, and remember when she couldn't give this? And it starts to bring that up. It's just, if there's a problem, it needs to be addressed with the people in the marriage, not with other people. If social media is a problem in your home, if you find yourself checking up on your old girlfriends or people you knew or whatever, maybe you need to get off social media so that doesn't lead somewhere it doesn't need to. And the last thing, men, be romantic. Be romantic with your wife. She needs that. That's what it says. Love your wives. That was the first 4 words of that Bible verse. Husbands, love your wives. Show her love, husbands. Wives need that so much. Men need a lot more respect and other things. Wives need romance. They do. Even if they tell you they don't, they do. We're going to talk about that in just a couple minutes, but keep that fire going. Keep it going. Okay, the next thing I have is husbands. A husband in a biblical marriage is a learner. He pays attention to his wife. He loves his wife. He is instructed in 1 Peter 3:7. He is instructed to understand his wife. It says, husbands, likewise dwell with understanding, giving honor to your wife as to the weaker vessel. Pay attention to that word, weaker. And as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. Okay. It said weaker. I did not pick up on this the first time I read it, and then it was pointed out to me, and it's beautiful. Giving honor to your wife as to the weaker vessel. It does not say, men, you are the strongest and your wife is weak. It's not what it says. And that is how you hear it when you first read it. But look at it closely, the wife as the weaker. In order for her to be weaker, the husband is weak. Men, you're human. You're human, and it's okay. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to need help. Accept that help. Yes, men, you are weak. Acknowledge that you're weak and understand that your wives are weaker and they need you. They need you, and they need you to pay attention to them. So how are you going to learn your wife? I know that once you get married, you have kids, you can get into this kind of rut where you feel like the fire is gone. You're not dating and all of that. You're just getting through each day, right? Working for the weekend maybe. So let's talk about the 5 kinds of love. And I'll even tell you which ones that work for me. Okay, 5 kinds of love. This is actually true. Okay, you will hear men like scoff at it because they're thinking, oh, okay, whatever. This is actually true. A person will, generally, you can even figure this out on your own, but there's 5 kinds of love, and a person will show love to somebody in the way that they want to be shown love. Okay, so the 5 kinds are gifts. Okay, buying gifts. How do you get gifts? It does not have to be jewelry, men. And can I just point out, pay attention to your wives, because I almost know no women who want a heart-shaped necklace. That's just the thing men always buy us. But guys, you're not dating your wife right now. You're married. There might be other gifts that would pique her interest more than a piece of heart jewelry. And so let's think about it. Maybe pay attention to your wife. What things is she interested in? What kinds of things is she into right now? Is she into baking? Is she into cooking? Is she into fishing? Is she into whatever? Does she have a new craft thing? And then maybe you surprise her with that. Maybe it's her favorite chocolate. Maybe it's her favorite whatever. But pay attention, men, and learn your wives. It's probably changed since you were dating. All right, the next thing you can do to show love to your wife's men is time. Spending time with your wife. Not time next to her while you're both looking separately at your phones, but engaged together. Maybe you're going on a date. Maybe you're doing something together. Maybe it's just a coffee run or going to the grocery store with the kids at home or something like that. But time together, not time beside each other doing separate activities, but time together. That one's pretty easy to figure out. But again, learn your wives. Service is the next one. How can you show service to your wife? Your wife is likely carrying a lot of chores every day. And I know, men, that you guys are busy. I get it. But maybe put the kids down for the night. My husband puts the kids down every night because it just works better that way in our home. But even if he sees that I'm tired or I've had a hard day, he says, hey, I'll take care of dinner. He is capable. Don't be a man who cannot be capable of doing things also, like cooking a meal, for example. And if you can't cook a meal, men, maybe you can take the kids out for pizza. Maybe your wife calls you and she's like, I am having a really bad day. And your response is not, oh, I'm so sorry, or, oh, well, what's for dinner? But maybe your response is, all right, what can I pick up on the way home? Or maybe you just show up. I'm bringing dinner. Don't worry about it, baby. That is service towards your wife and shows her, wow, he loves me and he cares because he cares about how I'm feeling right now. I can't tell you how many times over the years my husband has done that, and he'll just text me throughout the day, how's the day going? And I'm like, it's good, everything's great, dinner's almost done. But other times he'll text me and I'm like, we are falling apart right now. And he's like, that's all right, I'm grabbing something on my way home, don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay, great. But it can be other things too. Maybe you, I heard a story once of a man that every time his wife would get in the shower, he would take her towel and put it in the dryer for a couple minutes and then set it back in the bathroom. And then it was always super warm for her to get out of the shower. Just these little things that show They don't take any time at all, and they show your wife that you love her and you care and you thought of her. Okay, the next one is touch. Without sex, can we just say without sex? Let's hug, let's hold hands, the small of her back as you're walking through a door, you know, and just guiding her as you go, holding the door, just little bits and things, brushing the hair off of her face. And I mean, honestly, women love this stuff. And words. Compliment her spontaneously and without prompts, not just when she's dressed up nice, not just when you're going to someone else's wedding, but spontaneously, like when you even know that she's not feeling that great, or you know she's had a hard day, or you know that maybe she hasn't had looking her greatest or whatever, but you're complimenting her on not only the way she looks, but the things that she does. Like, hey, that was a really great meal, or you know, I really like the way you did that with the kids, or whatever. Hey, thanks for making sure I had my clothes this morning for work, or whatever. Compliment her. So what are mine? I'll tell you mine. Mine are service and words. I honestly don't get a lot out of the other three, touch and time and gifts, but when my husband tells me with his mouth or shows me by doing service for me with our job, with different chores around the house or whatever, it means the world to me. And it seems like such a small thing and it doesn't cost any money, but it means the world to me. Sometimes husbands, you think that, oh, well, I told her when we got married. I told her when she knows I love her, but women need to be told again. They need to be told frequently and often and daily. I would say daily, but even like weekly, they need to be told often that you love her. Don't just say, oh, I told her at the wedding, she knows. No, because she will start to question it. Again, Satan will come. She is weaker, okay? Satan will come in and start to make her question like, oh, well, he just doesn't pay attention to me, right? Everyone's been there. Every marriage, my marriage, everyone's marriage has been there. And working through those things in a Christian way will get you over those humps, and so that you can have a successful marriage. We have a successful marriage and it's a beautiful marriage, but we are not without fault. We have had issues, and that's why I can give you guys these tips. So thanks for watching, guys. Next week we'll talk about women and the role of a wife in a my dog, but we'll talk about the role of a wife in a Christian biblical marriage.